Go ahead.
Sorry. If you're having fun, I didn't mean to take it away from you.
No, hand stripping is not fun to me. It's one of the things I least enjoy about grooming.
I think if you can do time management, okay, because Jay's mobile, for him to spend the time at somebody's house that it would take to get this dog stripped down properly, it's probably really.
I still don't think I would do it. It's something I just don't enjoy. You know, and the thing is, I'd probably do it if the people would come in often enough and I didn't have to strip out like big hairy beast, you know, but if they would come in where I could rotate it and keep it looking the way it should look, I wouldn't have a problem with doing it. But something that's just so overgrown, you know, and it's just that pulling motion and it just wears you out at the end of the day. If I have clients, I do have clients that I hand strip their dogs, but, you know, I see them like every 2 weeks, so it's easy for me. But the reason is most of your clients aren't educated, and you haven't educated them and let them know why we bring this dog in more often and what the purpose of hand stripping the coat is and how it helps the coat in its general health, its color, its texture, and all the benefits that you can have from hand stripping a dog. Most people don't realize that, so that's the reason you don't get a lot of requests for hand stripping.
And a lot of times, I do think, as you had said before, a lot of times it is breeding. You know, for somebody to come in with a dog, a Westie, for a while there, I thought they were crossing Westies with Bichons because the Westies that were coming in had these thick, poodly coats, no wire at all to them. And I just thought, oh my God, what if these people ever requested a hand strip? I would never be able to do it. So you can tell when the dog is young, you know, if they've got that correct type of a coat. If you have a dog come in and it just doesn't feel like, you know, it's got a very soft coat with no wire at all to it, don't put the dog through it. Don't put the client through it. It's not fair when you can, with what you're looking for is to be able to maintain you know, a nice breed profile trim. You can do that with clippers and still have the dog look very natural. We actually do have a Westie DVD out that is done with clippers.
We clippered the dog and then we carded the back out with a carding tool just to keep some of that shine and some of that texture in the dog's back.
So I'm just trying to get a little bit more off of the length of his shoulders, just to kind of tighten up and show that he's got a nice strong shoulder under here.
You should be able to see the muscle on a Westie. When they're done properly and all this flat work is taken down short, you should be able to see this muscle. It's almost like an inverted, or not an inverted V, but a V shape right here. You can see that whole shoulder muscle once this is trimmed down and pulled down tight.
So what I've switched to right now is the fine, because I'm really trying to get more exposure on this shoulder. Sorry, baby. And sometimes I'll find that if you're working on a certain area and it really starts to bother the dog, I'll work on it just for so long and then I'll kind of switch to something else and then come back to it just to kind of give him a little bit of a break in that area. Because sometimes, you know, to really, when you see how much coat he has, to really get this nice and smooth and tight, I could spend an easy half hour just on this one shoulder. So I like to just kind of work my way around the dog. And that way it gives him a little bit of a break and it kind of gives me a different focus until I finally start seeing them all come together, you know, and looking like a dog again. Stop. That's a boy. You can see now he's got a shoulder coming in right here. And then sometimes what I'll do is switch to just the little rubber finger tips. If my hands just kind of get tired from, thank you. My hands get kind of tired from, you know, holding the knife and stripping. Sometimes I'll just kind of switch over to the fingertips, and they're just little rubber with little nubbies on the end of them, so you can kind of grip the hair pretty easy. And sometimes I'll just kind of switch to give my hand a little bit of a break from gripping the knife, and I'll kind of pluck through them this way also. Now, when the term rolling the coat, what that actually, you know, we talk about the coat rotation, and that's having the dog come in every few weeks and pulling coat so that you constantly have a new layer of coat coming in underneath. When they talk about rolling the coat, what they actually do is if you take, now I've got a hunk of skin right here, and you kind of roll it back and forth, and you see where these long guard hairs come out? So the best way to do it is to kind of stand behind him here, and I lift his skin, and I can see all these long guard hairs, and then I roll to the next layer. And if you roll the coat back and forth, you can see where all those long guard hairs are that need to come out. So that's actually where rolling the coat came from. So a lot of people just think it's rotating the coat, but when they roll it, they actually pick up the coat and just roll that layer of skin between your fingers, and you can see how all these long guard hairs pop out. And you can work your way all around the dog doing it this way too. So there's several methods, especially when they have this much coat. There's several methods that you can use, and I usually tend to use them all because I kind of jump back and forth to give my hand, my arm, my shoulder, a little bit of a break, and I can kind of do different ways, and I'm still working at achieving the same thing by the time I'm all done. You can see these little rubber fingertips, how nicely they kind of just grip the coat. And again, this long stuff, it's just dead coat. You can see I'm getting the whole hair shaft root along with it. So, but this I like to do when I do some of the finishing stuff, because you can always end up seeing some of these long hairs even when everything starts to lie down. So I just kind of will grab some of the skin and just kind of roll it back and forth. And you can see this long stuff that still needs to come out. And I find that doing it this way, I can actually get both sides of the dog in a little bit better position than I do when I'm using a knife. Good boy. So you can just see, all you have to do is just kind of hold it up in the light when you just kind of grab that piece of skin and just kind of roll it back and forth in your fingers and see all those long hairs that need to come out. You're a good dog. And this area too, I find that if I use the finger grips, I can kind of come in and pluck a lot of this stuff out.
And this on a Westie's throat should be really tight. That's what shows off their expression, what shows off their headpiece. It almost makes their headpiece look like it's separate from the dog's body, because you take this in nice and tight around the neck. See, it looks like it hurts, but it doesn't. Otherwise, the dog would be
Only me.
trying to eat her. Yeah. A lot of people that see us hand stripping, like if you're at a competition or something like that, they think it's being cruel to the dog because you're pulling the hair out, but they don't realize how the coat grows and how the rotating of the coat works.
We had a spectator at a show once, and it wasn't a regular grooming show. It was kind of a buyer's show, and it was a contest that I was co-coordinating, and a spectator came up and wanted me to call the MSPCA or the SPCA on one of the girls that was competing doing a hand strip. And I happen to know this girl personally, and she's one of the nicest people working on our dogs and everything, and this woman just thought it was totally cruel. The last show we were at, a woman had a Norwich Terrier, and she sat down in a chair, and then she had a towel in her lap, and the Norwich was sound asleep. Her head was actually hanging off the end of the lady's lap, and she was hand stripping her dog during competition with the dog sound asleep. So it's not necessarily a cruel thing to do. It's just a lot easier when it's not so much work at one time for them. Now his mom actually was nice enough to hold off on his grooming for us so that we could use him, so he is more overgrown on my account. Sorry, Jay. So he went a little bit longer because I knew that he was a good boy, and I knew that we'd be able to see some, real definite changes in him. So he's gone a little bit longer than what he normally does when he's regularly groomed. Okay, so you can see already the huge difference that we've made in this dog's back. And he still has a lot of coat that needs to come out, but I think what we'll do is we'll give him a little bit of a break, which is what I do in the shop too. I don't like him to have to sit on the table for hours and hours at a time. So usually I'll work on like one section at a time and then give him a little bit of a break and then come back. Okay, Port, would you like that? Would you like that? You good dog, huh? So what we do now, you know, we've gotten a good amount of his back coat off. We're going to kind of give his body a little bit of a break. On the head, what I would do if when I have the dogs that come in on a regular schedule, sometimes Thick and Thicker is a really awesome product that Chris Christensen makes. And what I'll do with my Westies when they're in the tub is they actually have a volumizing gel. So this actually it says 0 weight, natural feel, and natural lift and volume for the dog. So and it's actually kind of a neat product. It reminds me of the GAC that we used to use as a kid, and it's just kind of like a very light jelly kind of a feel to it. So you can use this actually on a clean dog. I can rub it into the coat and just kind of brush it in. It'll give it a little volume. But what I found with my Westies that after the bath, after they're all washed and I kind of blow them out, I'll take this, rub it into my hands and just rub it into the head. Then I blow dry that in and it gives a lot of lift to the head. Like we were saying before, most of the Westies that you'll see in the ring are so loaded with product. Their head, it's cholesterol, chalk, teasing, hairspray, everything to get that real spiky look. But they're also putting in the right amount so it looks very natural. It looks like the head naturally grew like that. But this truly is how the dog's head is going to look when there's absolutely no product in it and the dog is just clean and fresh out of the tub. He hasn't had his bath yet, but so this is really pretty much what you start off with, what most of those dogs start off with. Now, Port has actually a very nice texture to his head hair. This is actually pretty coarse and wiry. A lot of you dogs that come in that have a very silky fine head, every time they come in, what I'll do is pluck some of this hair just kind of randomly all around the head. If you can actually kind of do kind of like the rolling thing that we were doing on his back coat. If I lift this coat and you see all this really long stuff, you can pluck a lot of this stuff out by hand, and what that's going to do is it's going to help, just like with his back coat, it's going to help to promote some of this nice coarse wiry stuff to come back in. So this is usually what I'll do when I'm working on my pet Westies, and this is actually good with a lot of your terriers. If you have your Airedales, as you'll see in the Airedale section, with the Airedales, with your Welsh, with your Wire, even the eyebrows. When you have those eyebrows on your schnauzers that tend to flip back, pluck some of that hair in the direction that you want it to grow, and eventually you'll get that eyebrow to come in, and it'll have a little bit more texture to it and a little bit more weight to it, so it's not going to keep flipping back when you're having a lot of trouble with them. So, and this doesn't happen just over the course of from one grooming to the next. This is stuff that you really have to kind of work with, and and over the course of a couple of years you're going to start noticing that, wow, remember when the dog first started coming to me, and and then you're going to see that you're getting a little bit more shape and a little bit more volume to a lot of your terriers.
It's going to help the soft hairs that are in the coat, especially on your pet dogs. It's going to help the soft hairs stand up, so it'll give support up underneath the base of the coat, and then the other hair will kind of stand up around it. So it changes the whole shape of the head if you do that over a period of time.
Basically, when you're trimming the length of the head, when you do the Westie's head, you want to trim just the tip of the ear, because the ear actually kind of begins the circle going around the dog's head. So I kind of use that trim point where the very tip is. I kind of use that as my guideline. So if I hold the ear and some of the head hair up in my hand, where that line is, you can see all of this stuff right here that needs to come out. So I'll just kind of work your way around the dog. Even if you only spend 5 minutes on plucking some random hairs here and there out of the dog's head, you don't have to necessarily do the full groom and think that you're going to get this perfectly round head all by hand stripping it, because even in the show ring they're scissored and thinning sheared. But this is a technique that they're going to use to keep that coat nice and thick and coarse and wiry coming in. I'm just going to start by doing a little bit of mucking out on his coat. And what this will do is it's going to help to promote a healthy coat on him. Where the Airedale normally is hand stripped, if I can get some of this junk out, what it's going to do is it's going to give me smoother clipper work, it's going to give me a nicer finish. It's this fuzzy dead stuff that causes the coat to look really dull. So I'm just going to start by taking a little bit of this out, and it's going to make your clipper work go a lot smoother. Now he is already pre-washed and bathed and everything. When blow drying, you want to try to make sure you dry the back coat as flat as possible. And I actually used a little bit of Chris Christensen mousse gel on his legs when I was blow drying him, just to give them a little bit more volume.
Now, one thing when you're drying this dog, a lot of groomers tend to come in and just want to get as much water out of the coat as possible, and they'll take their force dryer and come in the direction from the back thinking that they're blowing all of this water out of the coat. But what's happening is you're actually pushing the hair that we want to lay flat, or we want to clip flat. We're pushing it up, and then when we go to do our clipper work, you wind up getting a lot of chop marks or a lot of tracks in the coat just from blowing the dog in the opposite direction as it lays. So always make sure you clip, card, strip, dry, everything in the direction that the coat grows. And this will also, if you get the Airedales where the backs you're losing a lot of color in the back, and the saddle, or the darker part of the dog starts to lose its color and they start to get gray and fade out, this will bring a lot of color back just by carding some of this coat out.
You can see he's had this done to him, because even though he's always been clippered, he still has a pretty black saddle, and a lot of his rust color is still dark. You can tell the areas that do get clipped when you get a dog that comes in, especially a terrier that comes in for the first time. You can tell pretty much what the last groomer has done to him a lot of times just by the color and the texture of the dog's coat.
And you can also see he has a lot of wire hair still in his coat, where the more we clip these dogs, the more the hair turns soft on us, so you'll wind up getting a real soft, dull look to them. And by carding this out, you'll get a lot of that wire coat to come back in, and they have the texture and the same feel that our show dogs would have, or not exactly the same, but they still have a lot of that wire hair in their coat.
If you do get an Airedale or any one of your terriers that comes in and it does have a very, very soft coat, a lot of times it is just breeding, and you're not going to be able to get a nice, coarse, wiry coat back on a dog that's got a very, very soft coat. A lot of times it's hormonal. After a dog is spayed or neutered, their coat will tend to soften, and they'll lose a lot of their color. So it's always important to try to do as much corrective grooming as you possibly can, but don't stress over it. If you get a dog that comes in that's very light, very faded, and very soft, you're not going to be able to get all that wiry, coarse hair back again.
And we'll use this technique on all of the clipper terriers that we do. We'll use this technique, whether you use a Furminator, whether you use like a classic stripping knife, just something to pull some of that undercoat out and get some of that dead hair out. That will promote the growth, especially like on your Westies that get the yellow in their back. That'll help that color come back in their coat.
Okay, this tool, as Jay just said, this is the Furminator, and I find this very comfortable to use because it has the handle. It's pretty much like a 40 blade with a handle on it, which a 40 is what a lot of people used to use to muck out and card out coats, but where they've made it a little bit easier for the groomer with the handle on it. The classic knife is just that, and it comes in a coarse and a fine. This one is a little bit more coarse, and so if you're going to use a classic knife, what you want to do is always to hold the skin as tight as possible, and I'm holding the knife more at an angle rather than straight up and down, and you can just kind of slide this through the dog's coat, and you can see it does the same thing, and it gets out all that fuzzy dead stuff from underneath.
One thing you want to remember when you're carding a coat or stripping a coat out, you'll notice as Sue goes through this coat with the carding knife, you'll hear it's pulling the hair rather easily. If it starts to pull and snag, and you start to feel the dog's getting a little bit uncomfortable, or you just feel that stripping knife start to drag, you probably need to stop stripping it out, because you're getting into the coat that you don't want to pull out. So let the tool do the work. Try to be really light-handed with the tool. If you get heavy-handed with these tools, you can burn them. You can cause irritation to the skin. So just let the tool do the work. That's what the tool's designed for.
Okay, from the outside corner of his eye, and I'm using my thinning shears on this too. I like using the thinning shears on my Airedale eyebrows, and again, it gives them a more natural look. Technically, this part, a lot of this part would be hand plucked, so I want to leave a very natural look there. So I find that if I use my thinning shears in that area instead of my straight shears, it looks better.
Also, if you use your straights and the dog happens to be looking the other way, or just happens to wink or something like that, once you cut it with your straights, it's done, and you have a real hard line there. With your thinning shears, are a lot more forgiving, so you can kind of blend that out if you do make a mistake.
Okay, now what I want to do, because I want to distinguish a difference between the eyebrows. Okay, stop. He's got a very strong head and he's kind of pushing against me, so so that I can distinguish the difference between the eyebrows. What I like to do at this point, because right now it just looks like one piece, so what I like to do at this point is from the inside corner of his eye, using my fingers, I'll actually pluck a thin strip going up around his eyebrow. And what this is going to do is to just give some separation and definition to his eyebrows. His hair is in there, it doesn't want to come out. I'm going to put on my little finger guards. Oh, you think that looks fun? That's a good boy. All right, stay. Okay, so stop.
Where do you get those? Is it a show dog?
These I actually got from Frank Rowe and Sons at the shows.
I mean, is that what they're for?
Like bankers use them when they're counting money and stuff like that. And my nail lady uses them. So I'm not sure like where you buy them, but at the shows I always got them from Frank. Stop.
Staples?
Staples might have them. Yeah, because they're good for counting money.
Office Max, Office Depot.
I'm surprised you don't have a pair for counting money, Jay.
Right. I have a wife and 4 kids. I don't have any money to count.
This stuff in the inside corner of the eyes, I mean, you can see this dog. He's actually closing his eyes, so you know that this isn't hurting him in any way. He's pretty relaxed with me right now. Oh, I lied. Before I really neaten up his beard all the way, you can see he still has a lot of bulk and a lot of bushy stuff here. So just like with the legs, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here with my stripping knife, and what you do is you take the hair between the thumb and the blade. So this stuff here, if you kind of comb it out, you can see this stuff that's sticking out here, and I'm going to take the tips of the hair between my thumb and the blade and just pull it towards me.
So she's not carding at this point. Like on the back, we carded this coat out. We basically pulled the undercoat out. Right now, she's actually stripping the coat out. She's using her thumb. She's using the stripping tool, and she's pulling dead coat out, and that's going to allow it to lay a lot flatter and look a little bit neater once we're done with it. Because Airedales are notorious to have this big bushy head, and the reason is people just brush it and comb it. They use their thinning shears and scissors to try to get it down, and as it grows back in, you get this huge bush. Well, by stripping it out, the technique she's using, that hair as it grows back in, it's going to be more coarse, it's going to lay flatter, and also if you'll notice she's stripping in the direction that we want the coat to grow, and so as she strips that coat out in that direction, as the coat grows back in, that's the direction it's going to grow in, that's the direction it's going to lay, so everything is going to be nice and tailored because of the technique she's using.
So when Jay was saying about people going in with thinning shears, and this is actually what I was taught, and what they would do and what I was taught to do to get rid of a lot of that bulk was to come in and make a couple of snips and then comb through, and you can get the coat to lie nice and flat doing that. But then the next time the dog would come in, of course they come in and they haven't been brushed and they're all bushy, but they have this chrysanthemum kind of a beard where all of this stuff is sticking out, and I realized over a period of time that I actually caused that, because when I went in and made a snip here and there, the dog left my shop looking beautiful, but all that hair that I went in and snipped is now growing back out, and what it's doing is it's pushing all of this top coat back out. So then what happens is the dog comes in and this is more what they look like, and I actually did that. So like I was saying earlier, this is something that I have been able to correct. It doesn't happen in one grooming. It does happen over a period of time. Adam hasn't actually been coming to our shop that long, so he still has, you know, I would be willing to bet that that's probably the way his face has been groomed, and I can tell that by the light color and the soft texture that's in his beard. Stop, stop, stop. So each time he comes in, if we work this face, if we work this beard a little bit and pull some of this stuff out, it's going to get less and less bushy and be more and more controllable, and we can also get some of the darker color to come back in. Okay, this is Blondie Lucy. She's a regular. She's a West Highland White Terrier, and she comes into my shop to be hand stripped. And actually, they had dogs previous to her, so she's only been into us a few times. And her very first time coming in, she was extremely overgrown. She had way too much coat. She had all this hair on her shoulders and everything. So I've been kind of working at a bit at a time, getting her you know, into shape and condition. So she was in a few weeks ago, and what we like to try to encourage the hand strip dogs to do is to come in every 3 weeks. And this is the kind of coat that we have to deal with. When they talk about, you know, rolling a coat and getting those layers of coat, when you lift up her coat, you can see that she's got a softer coat, she's got the wiry coat, and it's different lengths. And the reason for that is every time she comes in and I pull some coat, the next time that coat has started to grow back, I pull the top layer, that coat starts to grow back, I pull another layer, that coat starts to grow back. So the more often you can get them in on a regular schedule, that's where you start to get those nice layers of coat. When I first started hand stripping, I found it very discouraging because a lot of my hand strip clients weren't educated by the breeders, unfortunately, and what would happen is they'd bring them in every 6 months with a blown coat. And what a blown coat is all this dead hair that really needs to come out, all these long wiry guard hairs that need to come out. When you pull all that out, because she hasn't had a rotation going and layers of coat coming in, all she has left is a soft downy coat underneath. Totally changes, especially like on your Cairn Terriers that have like that brindly marking and everything, totally changes the color of the dog, changes the texture of the coat. And it's really not pretty to have the dog go out looking like that, you know, and it takes like a few weeks before the coat starts to come in and the dog starts to look normal again. A lot of times you'll end up with bald patches and everything when the dog comes in totally blown like that. So if you're going to do hand stripping in your shop, you really want to educate yourself enough to educate the client to get them to come in on a regular schedule.
Now when you rotate a coat, we're basically doing this coat in stages. So certain parts of the coat we want to be shorter, and then certain parts are going to be longer to make this dog appear to be a better balanced dog. And so the reason we do it in sections, or you know, do one part one week, one part the next week, and then the next part the next week, is because as all of that coat grows in at different stages, in a month's time, as you rotate this coat, you know, over a period of time, after the 3 weeks of rotating this coat, everything's going to look uniform, and it's going to look like it was all stripped out at the same time, and everything's going to look symmetrical and well balanced. So that's one of the reasons we rotate a coat. Now, like she said, most of your clients aren't going to come in and let you rotate that coat. So what's going to happen is, as you strip this coat, you're going to have sections that appear a lot shorter than they should be because the coat's starting to blow out. So you have to pull more hair out than you would normally leave if they are in a good rotation. So it's so much better if you can educate that client, even if they bring it in once a week and you spend 15-20 minutes on the dog. That way the dog's coat will be a lot healthier, and you'll get that look, and you can get the dog to look like the breed should look by rotating the coat. So you'll hear us talk about that a lot during this video.
And I think of the pet peeve with a lot of groomers is, as a breeder of standard poodles, when I'm looking for a good puppy home, what I'm going to do is I'm going to inform the client of all the work that's involved in keeping up with that particular breed. And I feel like a lot of the breeders aren't educating the people as to exactly what needs to be done. And if they don't, they need to understand, if they don't want to put the time into it, then do a nice pet clipper trim. And you know, you don't have to go through all the hand stripping, rotating the coat, and you know, worrying about color and texture and all that stuff. So I think it's really, education is like the #1 thing that you want to try to do with your client.
And pet owners, especially with the internet nowadays, they go and they read all of this stuff on the internet, and it says that the coat has to be hand stripped. So they bring it to a groomer and say, hey, I want this coat hand stripped. But they have no idea how much detail and how much work goes into hand stripping the coat and getting it to look right, you know, after it's hand stripped. You can't just go in and do it one time and say, hey, I hand stripped this dog, it's going to look perfect. It's just not going to happen that way.
What I do in my shop is I charge by the amount of time involved, because if they come in on a regular schedule, what it's going to take for me to you know, what work I'm going to put into this dog this time might not be as much as it was last time, and they do go through their heavier shedding periods and everything too, so there are times that I'm going to put a lot more work into this dog and it's going to be more expensive. So it isn't, when you're setting your prices for your hand stripping, you have to understand, and you have to make sure that the client understands that it's a time involvement that you have to go by, not by breed, not by size of dog, but more how much time you're actually going to put into it. That's very important because, like I said, there's some times that I might put 45 minutes into hand stripping her, or I might put 2 hours into hand stripping her. So the time involvement is really important.
Now we're going to show you a few differences between the tools. If you could hold that up. What Sue has in her hand now is a stripping knife. This is a Chris Christensen stripping knife, and what that does, it's made to pull the dead coat out. As we strip this coat, all the dead hairs and the hair that needs to come out of this coat, that tool is what you're going to use to pull that out. So we're doing more of a hand plucking or a hand stripping, as opposed to doing a carding. Now,
your stripping tools also come in different sizes too. So whether you're doing the really coarse back coat or maybe the finer work in the shoulder area, the detailing maybe around the head and the ears. So there is a large variety of tools that you're going to need to strip one dog. So it's not necessarily, you're not going to necessarily just do the entire dog with one stripping knife. Now this is your Furminator, and basically the idea of this was a lot of people use this more as like a carding tool to get out a lot of that fuzzy, downy, soft undercoat. You can do some mucking out on your terriers, but it's really, really good for your sporting breeds. For your Clipper terriers, it helps to get the soft, fuzzy stuff and bring some shine back to the dog's coat. Basically, it was like a 40 blade with a handle on it, and they just made it a lot more comfortable for the groomers to use rather than people used to take the bottom blade off and just use a 40 blade to rake through and get out all that dead stuff. Well, Furminator's made it a little easier for us.
And when you hear the word carding, you're going to hear us talk about carding and stripping. Carding is basically going over the top coat and pulling the dead hairs out. So we're not pulling them out with our hand, we're letting the tool do the work. So as we move this tool through the coat, it's going to pull out a lot of that undercoat. Now stripping is more technical and more, you use your thumb and you use your hands a lot more. You're actually going in and plucking this hair out individually. You're not carding the coat out as if we would on a sporting dog like a Cocker Spaniel or a Springer Spaniel, something like that. So they are two totally different techniques, but you'll hear a lot of people say, they may hand strip a dog and they're really carding the dog. So it just depends on what tools they're using and what techniques they're using. But we want to show the basic fundamentals of hand stripping and the fundamentals of carding a coat. So, and how the two different coat types and the different tools work on each coat type.
This is another carding tool. This is called the classic knife, and this comes in a coarse and a fine. And again, if you have maybe like a Springer or something that's got thicker hair on it, this will work really well. And again, like Jay said, it's not for pulling, it's more for like mucking, getting out the fuzzy dead undercoat, and just removing a lot of the loose hair and everything on the dog. And there are different companies that make different style carding tools and stripping tools and everything, but these are some of the more familiar ones that we like to use. Okay, now.
So we're going to be hand stripping this dog.
Yeah.
So this is not a dog that we would card out because this dog's coat has been hand stripped. It's got a lot of the wire hair. If you put your hands on this dog to touch this dog, it almost feels like a Brillo pad. It's very coarse, very wiry. So we want to keep that texture. That's the reason we're going to hand strip it as opposed to carding it.
So now, and when I start with her, what I usually do, when she comes in on a regular schedule, I'm going to start by just kind of stacking her up and checking out her conformation. You want to leave the hair in the neck area should be a little longer to show a little bit stronger arch of neck and a little more length of neck. So this hair is going to be a little bit longer here than it would be down here. And this area on the shoulder is going to be shorter than what we have down here. But I want her to have a nice level top line. So the way she looks right now, when I'm looking at her, she's a little bit low right here and she's a little high in this area. Okay, now when I start with her, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the tool that I'm going to start off with. Now what I'm going to use is this tool right here, and the reason being, you can see that the teeth are a little bit further apart, and that's going to get through a thicker, coarser coat a little bit better. These teeth here are a little closer together, and I'm going to use this for more of my finer areas, like the chest and the shoulder area. So the hair texture here is a little bit different. The length of hair is a little bit different. It's a little bit finer, so I would use the finer tooth for that area.
So the coarse one's going to be a little bit more aggressive for you because you're doing the back coat that's a lot thicker and it's a lot more coarse. So that's going to be a little bit more aggressive and be able to pull out more hair.
Now on her, because she is coming in on a pretty regular rotation, I don't bathe my hand strip dogs before I work on them, because you don't want to wash out all the dirt.
Then you have nothing to grip onto. If the dog is clean and you've washed all the oils and the skin out and gotten all the dirt off and everything, if the dog's clean, there's no way you can hand strip it. Your stripping knives just slide right through the coat and you have nothing to grip onto. If the dog's dirty or has gone maybe a week or so without a bath, you can grab these hairs without chalking it or anything. You can just pull these hairs right out. So it makes it a lot easier to work on a dirty coat. So even if you're going to bathe the dog, strip the dog out before the bath and then give it a nice bath. You'll get a lot more hair out before the bath.
Now, I know with, Jay and I talked about doing the hand strip and carding and everything, and I know that it really is pretty controversial, a lot of the stuff about the hand stripping. When I was competing in the contest ring, I had heard people say that they never bathe a terrier, ever. And then I've talked to other terrier breeders that thought, oh my God, I wouldn't want my dog stinking like that.
I've judged some that stunk so bad when I got finished judging them, I had to go wash my hands. It was
some people will say that if you bathe them right after they're stripped, where all the follicles are open, they can get very irritated. Personally, I have never had that happen, and where I am doing, I'm hand stripping, which is to the breed standard, but I'm also doing pet grooming. These dogs are going home and living in houses, and they're not going into the show ring. So what if I had a dog that was coming to me that was being shown, the techniques that I would use would be a little bit different than my pet dogs. My pet dogs we do a little bit of cheating on, and I am going to send them home with a bath. But when I bathe my dogs, I always use a hypoallergenic shampoo, like an oatmeal or something, some kind of a medicated, very soothing shampoo. So I'd never use anything really harsh on their coats right after I'm done stripping them. So what I usually start with is I'm going to start up here, and the way that I like to do it is I'm going to hold the skin nice and tight, and what you want to do is sometimes you can kind of lift some of this hair, and you can see these long guard hairs that need to come out. So what you do is use your thumb against the knife and you pull straight back. Okay, so what you're going to do is, and you can see how that comes out, and if you actually look at the end of the hair shaft, you can see the root, and that's what you want to do. When you look and you see that you can see the root, then you know that you're pulling correctly and not cutting. So what you want to do is the way that I like to do it is I go in rows.